put us through this tonight. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much. Also, no event happens in this hall without the permission and cooperation and generosity of two young ladies, and they're at the back also, and Sonia and Andy. Would you please each stand? We are graced tonight with a message from Governor Scott, and I ask Mike Tuda to come forward and read that message. Get really close to the mic.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you all for coming to the American Legion tonight. It is our honor to be having you with us this evening. We'd like to welcome everyone and our Gold Star families. Thank you very much for attending tonight. It means the world to us, and we thank everyone. We have a message this evening from our governor. Dear veterans and family members, I am sorry I cannot be with you this evening, but I wanted to express my sincere gratitude for your service and sacrifice. To all of those who have worn the uniform, thank you for the service you have provided to our nation. The dedication and commitment you have shown speaks volumes of your character and honor. Be assured your efforts are appreciated and will never be forgotten. To all of their families, thank you for your sacrifice and that you allowed your loved ones to serve. Behind every great soldier is a support network, and without your support, they would not have been able to complete their missions. I send my best wishes for an enjoyable evening and celebration, and thank you again for your service and sacrifice. Sincerely, Philip B. Scott, Honorable Governor of the State of Vermont. Thank you all.
We have a lot of heroes, American heroes who are Vermonters. One of them is on the front page of your program. Another is a young man who grew up in Franklin, Vermont, and he rose from E1 to a Chief Master Sergeant, Chief Command Master Sergeant. Brian Marchessault, who is here tonight, came down from Franklin to speak to us. Brian has served as a senior enlisted leader and advisor to the commander on all matters affecting combat operations with 2 air expeditionary groups and an expeditionary air support operations. He served in Operation Freedom, Sentinel, and NATO's Resolute Support. He also advises and assists with joint enterprise tasks and individual augmentee airmen in the Afghanistan Combat Joint Operations Area. Command Chief Marchessault spent the last 9 months in Afghanistan and was awarded the Bronze Star for his service. Brian, thank you for coming down.
You know, you look out in this audience tonight, and I feel like I'm standing on shoulders of giants because of all the people, the service that you guys have done. Can you hear it? All right. Now, I'm used to standing so close to the mic. Folks, I'll say that again. I feel like tonight I'm standing on shoulders of giants, and I look at you, and you're the giants. People who came before us, and basically all the great things, that so we can do what we do tonight and have a great. We can break bread tonight with a great family. But I want to say thanks to Lieutenant Tom Costello. When he called me and he talked to me about coming down, what an honor for me. I got goosebumps tonight talking to you guys. The other one I want to say is, I want to say to the families we recognize tonight, I want to say thank you. The sacrifice, words can't say enough to you guys. I'm humbled and honored to be here. For all the vets, well, let me back up. When I came home, and my good friend, the Colonel, when he came home, we get celebrated really well. Some of you did not. What I want to say to you all tonight is, welcome home. You guys deserve a pat on the back for what you guys have done. What I want to talk to you tonight is a little bit about Afghanistan. What I saw in Afghanistan, I didn't expect what I was going to get into. I've always deployed with the F-16s. I've always gone with 300 airmen, been in the weeds. When I went over to Afghanistan, I was the first Guard Command Chief to be a numbered Air Force Command Chief, and I learned an immense. And I want to share that tonight with you. I had a dual-hatted mission. We talked about Operation Freedom Sentinel. Operation Freedom Sentinel is taken to the bad guys, folks. That's a U.S. mission only. That is getting after the enemy. And I will tell you right now, sometimes you don't know who the enemy is over there. And I'll talk about that a little bit as well. But under that mission, we had the 455th Air Expeditionary Wing in Bagram, the 451st Air Expeditionary Group in Kandahar, the 438th Expeditionary in Aiz-Qai, which is in Kabul, the 738th in Kandahar, the 817th Special Forces, and the 955th. Had no idea how much responsibility was about to be levied upon me. We had numerous FOBs, 101 AFSCs, which means there's 101 different jobs that are actually being accomplished over there by our airmen and soldiers. That's pretty amazing. When I say we took it to the enemy, I want to share with the combat capability on the part which we levied upon out there. We had tankers at Kandahar. We had E-11 Bacon. Let me talk about that aircraft just for a second. No matter where your soldiers, your Marines, Navy, Air Force, it didn't matter. It didn't matter where your troops on the ground are. You had a cell phone, you had a flip phone from the 80s. You could actually make a call. You could make a call and you were talking to somebody. So how does that affect, if you talk about the soldier on the ground with a gun, and they have troops in contact, they could call in F-16s. We had A-10s. We had pararescue on 2 different stations that stood tall for 24/7. The MQ-9 fleet. You talk about the MQ-9 fleet that was out there, it was 26% of the unmanned aircraft in the Air Force fleet was at Kandahar, all supporting the troops on the ground. At Bagram, we had F-16s, AC-130 gunships, C-130 transport, Special Forces. But what was all that for? And you want to know who the enemy is. Basically, they get their money from drugs. They get it from the poppy season when they grow it. They get to the point where they grow it in their meth labs. And how we took them out when the troops on the ground called for support. I'll explain to you a little bit how we actually did that. We call it the Black Cloud. If we sent out the troops on the ground and they were in a certain spot, what we could do is we could actually stack the airspace. We could put an MQ-9 overhead for 30 hours, just looking at the ground, tracking the people we want to track. We could put F-16s based on a different orbit. We could put A-10s in a different orbit. We could put tankers up there, and we put E-11s. I will tell you right now, the troops that we have over there now are the safest they've ever been because of the joint. The joint environment truly does work. We also had the F-16s and our combat capability. We had it on GCAS. We had it on ground close air support. So if somebody called, we could actually launch them and actually recover them quickly. We had aircraft airborne and CAS, close air support, all the time. CIVCAS, civilian casualties, were a huge deal over in Afghanistan. Every single one that we dropped the bomb on under Operation Freedom Support was investigated. You couldn't get it wrong. And I'm going to talk about in a minute about the Afghan Air Force and how much they were under the pressure. I will tell you right now, I'm going to give you an unclassified 2 words that you guys go home and look up tonight, and it would make you proud to be an American. It's Project Maven. I will tell you right now, Project Maven lives, and it's in Afghanistan right now. And if somebody wants to go look it up, the artificial intelligence, it's absolutely amazing. Let's move on to the second mission. The second mission was Resolute Support. This is where it gets really, really complicated. It's a train, advise, and assist command. And what I was embedded with, and I was not prepared for, and you learn it really, really quick, we had 39 NATO partners and countries that we actually dealt with. They were, no kidding, in the train, advise, assist. So what does that mean? What we actually did is we were standing up the Afghan National Army, we were standing up an Afghan Air Force, and we're training them. Your sons and daughters are out there training this army, and basically they're right next to the FOBs. It could be, let's say in Fenty, there was 40,000 Afghan National Army troops, and we're training them daily. It's dangerous work. I'm telling you right now, it's dangerous work, and we'll get into it a little bit more. But I want to share with you how many troops on the ground do we have in Afghanistan. Afghanistan's big. We have 15,000 uniformed members wearing this in Afghanistan right now. If you look at Bagram, at one time Bagram was huge. They have 20,000 empty beds. I want to put it in perspective. 20,000 empty beds now is how much we've shrunk the force in Afghanistan. You go down to Kandahar. Kandahar has 25,000 empty beds. So we're 15,000. So I would ask you to reflect on that question. Can we do everything in Afghanistan that we need to do with 15,000 for a dual-hatted mission with 39 coalition partners? Here's what I'm going to tell you, folks. Something I learned really closely, you don't hear on the news. How many contractors do you think we have in Afghanistan? We have 45,000 CLS, contract logistics support, and I call them, they're your sons and daughters. So we hire intel analysts and we put them in the FOBs because we're only mandated for 15,000 and we're on a drawdown. What I would tell you is what I worried about, some things I was losing sleep about is if we drew down and we said we were leaving Afghanistan today, we'll break the Air Force. I'm going to give you again, this is in my opinion, I'm giving you my opinion, because how do you get 45,000, and I'm going to show you a little map in a second of what the problems that we face. When we coordinate and develop the Afghan Air Force, so you say, well, what are you guys doing building an Afghan Air Force? Congressionally mandated that here's what we bought. We bought aircraft, a 208B, which is a huge Cessna, carries about 10 people. AC, which is a gunship, which is a 208, same aircraft, but it has guns on it. A-29 attack aircraft, C-130. We have U-860s, Black Hawks. We have MD-530. All open source. It would cost $8 billion to basically fund that and try to train them. What I would tell you, what we're doing though, is actually while we try to stand up this Afghan Air Force, is that 45,000 contract with just support is actually trying to train them. And right now, we're doing it. But it's complicated. It is really, really complicated. Now remember, we're doing it with 15,000 people. Go down to Kandahar. All that combat capability, if you went to one active duty base, you're looking probably, 5,000, 6,000, maybe a little more. We're doing all the bases that I read off with 15,000. In E5, everybody knows what the E5 is. You take a staff sergeant. We had a staff sergeant in Kandahar. How many people do you think that staff sergeant was supervising on the civilian side? 297. 297 people. I'll tell you, I tip my hat off. Please don't take this as negative. I tip my hat that we have E5s and we have airmen and soldiers that are actually out in the field that can take this mission on and do it. It's absolutely amazing what they're doing. So when they come back, thank them. Because here's the deal, they'll never tell you that story. They'll never tell you that story. We talked about a little bit about the ANA, Afghan National Army. That is very complicated. At Fenty and HKIA, we have huge bases that we're training them. And it gets into the I talk about checkpoints. If you look at Afghanistan, there's actually a huge circle. It's one highway that goes all the way around Afghanistan. Bill, can we put that picture of Afghanistan on there? So it's one highway, and there's 1,000 checkpoints around there. And what we do is they actually do very, very small checkpoints. What we found out is a little bit of corruption, maybe a lot of corruption, is when people are using that highway, they're using that money and they're taking the money. The problem we had was Taliban was actually stopping the checkpoints from taking bribes. So the Taliban was looking good. So what we were training, it was a little bit of corruption. It's difficult, folks. If it was an easy answer, we would have fixed it. It is difficult. Are people over there doing their best? You bet. They're rocking it. What I wanted, can you guys hear me if I talk loud? Okay. What I wanted to talk about a little bit is over here, that would be Herat Base, Air Base. And what Herat was, it was run by the Germans. I'm sorry, that's run by the Italians. If you go up to Mazar-i Sharif, that is run by the Germans. And they all have a different way of running things. You come down right below it, you'll have Bagram. Bagram is a U.S. Air Force base. Come down below it, just below Bagram, you hit Kabul. Next to Kabul, you'll have a ton of FOBs. All these FOBs is NKC. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, about a young lady who is, I'll tell you what, I'll take her to war any day with me. He says you'll have HKI, which is the international airport where we train the special forces. You come down below, right there is Patika. Patika is, I was so proud of the airmen and soldiers that are actually serving there. Basically what they ran into is all around, and people saw us earlier, says, what do we have for extremist groups? The extremist groups, I would tell you, is we had Haqqani, we had ISIS, we had Taliban, and they all hate each other. I will tell you folks, we're not at war with Afghanistan, we're at war with a global war on terrorism. So the things that the U.S. is doing over there is absolutely amazing. But I will tell you right now, it's at nighttime when I went down to the FOB, the first time I went to a FOB, I had never been to a FOB before. It's the size of a postage stamp. It is tiny. You can land a helicopter in it, and then you can get out. To see what all the branches, I don't want to say one branch, all the branches, what they were doing in these FOBs, over 30 FOBs, was phenomenal. They're mixing, they're going outside the wire, they're talking with the Afghan National Army, but you never know who the enemy was. So I commend them. Come down below, Kandahar. Kandahar is actually one of our big, massive bases. We have two really, really big bases for the Air Force. We have one for Bagram and Kandahar. Everything else is pretty much small, FOB, and they're doing a ton of work. What I also want to talk about is, now that I showed you the layout, how about state actors and non-state actors? Who is influencing what's going on in Afghanistan? Remember, I'm only going to give you a short period of time of what I'm seeing from my perspective. You know Iran just did with the tankers, and they just had basically what they did to Saudi Arabia, and look where they are. They're to the west of us. If I used you for a map, and you look, you see Iran over here to the west. They don't like us. We can't fly over their country. Go to the north, you have Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. We can't use their countries as well. Go to the northeast, and you look at it, you have China and Russia. They have a huge influence in that country, but it says we can't fly in there. Come to the south, and you got Pakistan. And the reason I want to come back to Pakistan was it's such an important thing. Is, do you guys remember when I was over there, an F-16 got shot down by India, and Pakistan was blaming them? Yeah. The only way that we can get resources in and out to our service members is through Pakistan. All the other countries have basically shut us down. We can't fly in and out. So we called it two things. We called it a G-lock and an A-lock. Am I talking too fast, by the way? So the G-lock is a ground lock that we can actually bring stuff up, but however they do, they pulverize it. They steal it. However, we have an A-lock. And so that's basically a small corridor that we can fly up in and out. So where do our supplies come from? This is really, really cool. From Qatar, our planes would take off, fly down through here, come up all the way up into Afghanistan. Immense amount of resources to get things up and in. Imagine when they shut that airspace down, how much we spent our time just working on airspace to get it back open, taking a trip to Pakistan and General Miller negotiating a deal. It was a huge deal. All this stuff is happening through this, and it's constantly, every day. You're not hearing it in the news. I want to go back to the non-state actors, how they're affecting us. I'm telling you, every day, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, Haqqani network, every single day, it was a different one. General Miller, who I tell you, I had the best senior leadership. Any command chief who went over there would have loved to work for that command. That leadership was amazing. General Miller was like, let's control the info space. He was all about having a public affairs team. The minute one of those radical terrorist group would put out a message, he would counter it with the facts. He basically leveled the field. It was amazing that people found out on CIVCAS, civilian casualties, wasn't us. Sometimes it was them, and they were blaming us. It was amazing. Influential factors, I started talking about that already. One of the big ones was, how many of you guys remember Russia and Pakistan holding their own peace talks with the Taliban? How much do you think that threw a wrench into our plans over there? When you're looking at it from a 30,000 foot view and you have Khalilzad who's over there trying to do a peace negotiation, trying to settle that, and you have outside influences. And there was a ton of outside influence. So when you're actually looking at this, you're trying to take care of the soldiers, say, hey, go do your job, we got this. But this is going on the offset. The presidential elections. I get into Afghanistan, I hear there's going to be this great presidential election. It's going to be done. Says Ghani's running for re-election. They have it. It gets slipped. It gets slipped to April. Then it gets slipped to June. And it was slipped again to, I think it just happened. But what does that do? We have mod advisors. We have Ministry of Defense who are fully trained, fully in the language of Dari. They know the language. They're down there every single day. It's in the green zone by the embassy. They have a huge, dangerous job. They're trying to teach them how to do the polling stations. They're trying to teach them how to put the flyers out, how to vote, and who to vote for. Basically giving the knowledge out. Not swaying it, but just teaching them the democracy way. I will tell you, 2 years ago, what I worried about is when I found out in that same building that we were working on, the mod advisor team that was supposed to be completely safe, 13 of them died. Basically, when we say green on green and green on blue, that happens. And I tell you right now, when I lost sleeping, I probably got a lot of gray hair from over there is, every time someone went outside the wire, I worried about them. It was a big deal. The thing I'm not talking about is IDS. I'm not talking about indirect fire. I'm talking about things that are going on day to day that you look as a senior leader, what are you going to worry about? Our soldiers are doing it, and they're knocking it out of the park. The other one for influential factors. Maybe I'm a naive kid from Franklin, Vermont. I didn't realize what Ramadan was. I found out very quickly what Ramadan is. Don't be walking outside. Do not be eating. Do not be drinking. Do not be chewing gum. And then you worry about 15,000 plus another 45,000 contract with just support. Don't be doing this, because I'm going to tell you right now, that will set us back so far you have no idea. Ramadan is not a very short one. It's actually quite long. It starts May 5 to June 3rd.
Yep.
Tom, how am I doing on time? Am I okay? Key leader engagements. We have a ton of key leader engagements. Basically, General Ramatullah weekly from the ANA, Afghan National Army. General Shaib. We have the President of Afghanistan that we met with all the time, President Ghani. Khalilzad. They all play a huge factor in taking up the time of what's going to happen. I didn't realize either that the 27th April was the April start of the fighting season.
I'm sorry, but it's one more season than mud season, and I hear you.
I'm telling you, they keep coming, because this was a huge learning lesson. And remember, I was there for a short period of time, because what it is, when you change over, the next person is going to be learning the same thing. 29 April, the Loyal Jirga. Loyal Jirga is basically it's tribal. All the tribes in the country come into Kabul, and they have this huge 2-week event. It goes on for everything. All the roads go black. You're not traveling. You're not outside the wire. The road movements outside the wire were amazing, and I'm gonna finish with one of the road movements. FML, the dreaded FML, the Force Management Level. When we hear that they came out of the news and says, "Hey, we're going to take it from 15,000 down to 8,700," how do you think we're going to do that? We have all those bases that I just showed to you. So now what we do is the problems we had is I got to cut that down to 8,700. I say it was a team. How we did part of it is we actually talked about over the horizon. What we did is anybody who did not have a contributing job to the fight, we basically moved over the horizon back to Qatar, to Al Dhafra. We were moving special forces that had the admin work. We moved multiple areas. We moved the 455th, the 438th, 738th, 455th, and the 955th. We moved multiple people trying to get down there, and we still couldn't get down there. And they're still not down there now. The other part I found out is, remember I had 39 coalition partners. What I found out is my manning dock is not a U.S. manning dock. It's a NATO manning dock. And we call them CE billets, which is crisis elements. And what we did is we found out is you couldn't do anything without Mother May I back to Brunson. So what it is, it took an immense amount of time from a senior leader to actually rebuild manning docks. Everybody was on the pins and needles during the State of the Union. We didn't know it was coming. And really what came out of the State of the Union was nothing. We prepared a lot for it, but no drawdown from Afghanistan. I'll talk about Jet IA program. This is one of my proud moments is Jet IA is Jet Expeditionary Tasking Individual Augmentee. What we do is we actually, the Air Force years ago came up with this program to help the Army out. We took very, very skilled jobs and we actually loaned them to the Army. It was developed about 15 years ago. And basically what it is even though after 15 years you think somebody was looked at it and said, hey, is it still ready? Is it still a good program? Nobody looked at it. What we found out is we were taking intel analysts and putting them in Afghanistan, and the Army was actually having them driving trucks and Humvees. So what we did is we actually killed that program. So we're giving 2,000 airmen back and we're going to restore readiness. And what we did is we didn't have to send them home. We did it through attrition. So that when they were going to backfill, the Army had to look at it. If it's critical, then they were going to fill it. If it's not critical, we didn't need that person, we're going to restore readiness. Air quality. Who knows the air quality in Afghanistan? How bad is it, ma'am?
Can't see a thing.
It is the worst air quality in the world. If you've seen the burn pits, so if you were standing outside right now, you wouldn't be able to see the bar. It is the worst. The city grew from 100,000 people. The city grew from 100,000 people probably 10 years ago. It's over 500,000 people now, and they burn garbage to heat their homes. You can't blame them. It is really, really bad. They did a poems. They have people who have machines now to test the air. It's actually on the burn pit registry. If you know anybody, make sure you tell them to sign up. Okay, I got to close this up. I'm going too long. Last story I'll tell you is what we tried to fix was airmen coming into theater and airmen going home from theater. It is actually it's a nightmare. To get into theater, it takes you up to at least 2 weeks to get into Afghanistan from stateside. It takes you 2 weeks to get home, and it gets actually worse. What we tried to do, all the coalition partners were flying from Germany, flying right into HKIA, which is the international airport in Afghanistan. We're not. So we actually took that all the way up to Transcom. We lost that battle, so we're still fighting. They're still fighting that on their end. But I will tell you now, what we're trying to do is trying to give time back to airmen and soldiers. So let me give you a number. 300,000 hours per year lost the way we're doing business. And we're trying to fix it. Folks, I would like to open up for questions. I don't know if I have time, Tom. No?
We don't have questions yet.
Okay, questions afterwards. I'm going to close, folks. I am really, really proud to be here tonight. I tell you, America needs to be ready. They need to be ready to raise their right hand, kind of like what Shane's doing back there. And I will tell you, what gets me passionate is when I hear those words, I do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Folks, when I sit in this room tonight, that just reassures me. America's okay. Thank you for letting me talk tonight.
On 9/11, Americans awoke to a new reality. The terrorism and all its evil had reached our shores, and we were no longer immune to this destructive force. On 9/12, the country began its response with grim determination. Since the beginning of the War on Terror in 1990 with Operation Desert Shield, soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and Coast Guardmen have operated in harm's way to defend our freedom. I am proud to have the privilege to have leading them in battle. Admiral Costello. Thank you very much for coming. I have a copy of the Admiral's book for you with great gratitude. Thank you. Chief Command Master Chief will be here afterwards to answer all questions and to discuss these matters further. Flanders fields, the poppies blew between the crosses row on row. They mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders field. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, ye shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders field. Spencer Lawrence, would you join me, please?
On Memorial Day 2006, President George W. Bush quoted Lieutenant Mark Dooley in his speech at Arlington. Remember that my leaving was in the service of something that we loved, and be proud. The best way to pay respect is to value why a sacrifice was made. Good evening. My name is Spencer Lawrence, and I am a junior at BUHS. Tonight, I have the honor of remembering Lieutenant Mark Dooley. He was born in Oklahoma on July 15, 1978. He and his family then moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. After 5 years in Florida, the family permanently relocated to Wallkill, New York. These moves were a result of Mark's father being in the Air Force. This caused both of the sons to grow up with respect and understanding of the military. As a child, Mark liked to dress well, or in G.I. Joe type clothing. He enjoyed watching Steven Seagal type movies and also enjoyed being outside and spending time with family. He was a part of the local Cub Scout troop and went to church with his family every Sunday. Mark was known as someone who was kind, thoughtful, and who loved animals. He believed that if you do something for one person, you should do it for everyone. Mark had a strong sense of right and wrong. When Mark was 10 years old, he aspired to become a police officer. In school, he wrote a report on how to train a dog and how he wanted a German Shepherd. While creating this report, he taught his family's dog to do certain tasks, such as opening a drawer to get a treat and finding items in the backyard. Knowing that Mark really wanted a German Shepherd, his grandfather got him one for his 11th birthday. He named her Chase. In elementary school, his favorite subject was U.S. history, and he played on the soccer team. But when he was in high school, he ran track and cross country. As a senior, he was the track captain, but his favorite sport was cross country. Several years after Mark got his dog, he found an owl in the woods. The owl had injured its claw and couldn't walk. Mark took it in and cared for it for a few days, and then brought it to someone the family knew who helped wildlife. Sadly, the bird was never able to return to the wild, but it was brought to a bird sanctuary where it lived happily. Family was very important to Mark. When his father was away, he would drive 3 hours just to plow his parents' driveway and immediately drive back to go to work. After he graduated from high school, Mark attended Norwich University in Vermont. At Norwich, he majored in peace, war, and diplomacy. During his college years, Mark made friends that he would later consider almost family. In his senior year of college, Mark joined the Vermont National Guard. He graduated from Norwich University and the Vermont Police Academy. As a part of the Vermont Army National Guard, he was first lieutenant of the 3rd Battalion, 172nd Mountain Infantry Regiment, 42nd Infantry Division of Jericho. Mark would later join the Windham County Sheriff's Department, and then, fulfilling his childhood dream, became a police officer. Ultimately, he would call Wilmington home. As a part of the National Guard, Mark attended Ranger School. The night before he graduated from Ranger School, Mark and his peers were building a fire. As he was chopping wood, part of a piece broke off and got embedded in his forehead. Mark tried to pull out most of the splinters, but failed to get them all. When he got home, he still had wood in his head and asked his mom to try to remove the rest. Periodically, he would have his mother reopen his wound and remove more splinters. Upon completion of Ranger School, Mark returned to the Wilmington Police Department. Mark felt a sense of duty to serve his country. When he left the police department, he put 2 pictures on his desk, one with him in police uniform and the other in military uniform. He also left a note that simply said, "This is the desk of Patrolman Mark H. Dooley. All people deserve freedom." He was deployed to Iraq and helped fight the War on Terror. And then, on September 19, 2005, Mark Dooley and 2 fellow servicemen were killed by an IED. After his death, he was awarded the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, the Army Achievement Medal, the Iraqi Campaign Medal, 2 U.S. Meritorious Service Medals, the Vermont Patriot Medal, and the Medal of St. Maurice. He is buried at Arlington National Cemetery. He is survived by his parents, Peter and Marianne, and his brother, Charlie. He is remembered at his high school by a corner post that the track team uses to measure their runs, and 2 5Ks that raise money for scholarships in Mark's name for students aspiring to go into the military. While Mark was in the National Guard in the Wilmington Police Department, he trained at the Ethan Allen shooting range with a few friends. Before long, he realized there was nowhere to train for entering a building with armed occupants. With his friends' help, they constructed a roughly built shoot house for everyone to use. After his death, the National Guard honored him by rebuilding the shoot house exactly the way Mark had. There is a granite marker inscribed with the words from Mark's last letter home. "Time will ease pain, and the best way to pay respect is to value why a sacrifice was made." Thank you.
Mr. and Mrs. Dooley, we hope that this flag that we're going to give you, which was flown over Afghanistan in honor of your son, will in some way demonstrate to us our extreme pride of being with your son and our gratitude for all he did. Thank you very much.
Gorgeous. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good job.
Sam?
My name is Sam Kuzinin. I'm a junior from the Brattleboro Union High School, and the veteran I have the honor of telling you the story of is Sergeant Charlotte Marcy. I had the absolute pleasure of working with Charlotte's mother, Teresa Marcy, who was wonderful and has helped me to accurately bring the life of Charlotte to all of you. Charlotte was born in Brattleboro, Vermont on July 19th in 1984. She grew up in Guilford with her mother, Teresa, her father, Michael, and her brother, Paul, who was 2 years older than her. The Marcys were an athletic family, and Charlotte was no exception, climbing mountains at the age of 2. Of course, having a brother provided great competition. Everything the 2 of them did was, anything you can do, I can do better. The schools she attended were St. Michael's School, the Grammar School in Putney, and the Guilford Elementary School, which at the time one could go up through middle school, and the Brattleboro Union High School. Charlotte was an animal lover to the core. She loved animals of all shapes and sizes, but horses she had a special connection with. Her family lived across from a horse stables, and not being able to afford riding lessons, let alone a horse, she worked at the stables in exchange for being taught to ride. She bought her first horse when she was 15, who she named Jupiter. She owned 3 horses total in her lifetime. Charlotte was an absolute force of nature. It was her way or the highway, and she let no one push her around. She was always full of spunk and adventure. One time when she was 16, she rode her horse to school and went through the Burger King drive-thru on her horse. Imagine getting that call from the police. Originally, Charlotte wished to go into law enforcement, and so was taking a course at the Career Center. She strived for fairness and wanted to be able to make things as fair as she could and to serve her community. Charlotte's brother Paul was in the Navy as a pilot, and she originally had no intentions of joining the military. However, one day she had worn her brother's Navy shirt, and the National Guard recruiters at the high school roped her in. Before she went to basic training, she had to sell her horse Jupiter. She flew through basic and advanced training with flying colors. She was the best in her class and beat out all of the males in physical fitness. Truly a force to be reckoned with. On Charlotte's first tour of Iraq, she was part of the military police. She was supposed to tour with the Vermont Army National Guard, but she was 3 pounds under the minimum weight and had to wait a year before being deployed as a replacement soldier with Arizona's National 860th Military Police Company in 2005. She was in Iraq for barely a week before just missing a roadside bomb. Charlotte sustained a traumatic brain injury but remained in Iraq until the end of her deployment and was back in action after recovering just a week. Definitely not enough time to fully heal. After coming home at the end of her first deployment, there was evidence of PTSD, and her parents did not want her to tour a second time, for her physical injury was still causing some trouble as well. During her second tour, she was deployed in a regular Army unit. She worked really hard, and within 2 years, she went from a private to specialist to corporal to sergeant. This is really impressive, especially for a female in the military, where you have to work twice as hard to get half the recognition. During Charlotte's tour, she always wrote a response to every letter she received, handwriting each one to family, friends, and anyone else who wrote to her. In her service, she won a total of 6 awards: the Combat Action Award, the Army Commendation Medal, the Iraqi Campaign Medal, the Armed Forces Reserve Achievement Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Medal, and the National Defense Medal. Charlotte came home from her second tour in 2009. With all her money saved up, she bought land in Guilford and, with the help of her friends and family, built a house. Charlotte was also on the lookout for a service dog. Her boyfriend at the time was really keen on getting a Weimaraner, which as a breed generally don't make good service animals. However, she was determined as ever, and when she found a Weimaraner puppy in Missouri, she drove 24 hours straight to pick up the puppy. The puppy was named Hooligan and was trained by Charlotte herself. Hooligan was more of an emotional support animal rather than providing services such as opening doors. Charlotte didn't come home from Iraq unscathed. She suffered from PTSD and a brain injury that never really hurt from the first tour. She got into a car accident where her car flipped over. She saw the sunlight through the trees as it set, and to her it looked like gunfire, which caused the accident. Incredibly lucky, she was mostly unharmed. Charlotte tried to pursue a career in law enforcement again and got a degree from the CCV. She attempted education at Keene State but struggled immensely before dropping out. And so Charlotte spent a lot of her time volunteering. She wanted to be able to help people in need. She didn't need to be paid. She spent a lot of time tending to the garden at the World War I Memorial Park in Brattleboro, making sure the veterans that fell before her still had a nice place to rest. She also spent a lot of time at the drop-in center working for the overflow shelter. She never really slept, so she took the 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. shift, making sure people had tents and blankets to get through the night. Charlotte also continued to spend a lot of her time with horses. She owned 2 horses of her own and also partook in therapeutic riding. During therapeutic riding, she spent 2 to 3 hours each day, twice a week, grooming her horse and riding. In 2014, at a horse riding show at the Guilford Fair, Charlotte suffered from heat stroke. She was airlifted to Dartmouth Hospital with a temperature of 109 degrees. It was a miracle she survived it all. Stroke worsened her previous injury and additionally damaged her shoulders, neck, brain, which compromised her speech and mobility. In the end, she was essentially confined to a wheelchair. Charlotte committed suicide on September 30th, 2016 at the age of 32. It was a combination of PTSD and the loss of her ability to be active and relieve stress through the activity that brought her to this point. She fought 2 years against the struggles of her physical limitations, and the only thing that kept her alive for as long as she was were her horses and being able to work with horses. She struggled with her will to live for a long time, and in the end found no joy in the life she was living with nothing to fix it. It was no one's fault. Charlotte's Arizona unit from her first tour of Iraq had more suicides than any other unit in the Guard. Charlotte's death was the 9th one, and they've had 13 in all. Veterans commit 22 of the 129 average suicides daily. Mental health and suicide are topics that the world tiptoes around, holding their breath despite its immense importance. Over time, the stigma has been started to lift, and it will continue to lift, and perhaps we'll be able to save some lives.
Teresa and Michael, we present this flag to you to recognize this extraordinary American hero. And we hope that you will treasure it and recall how much we love and honor Charlotte.
My name is Marley Hathaway, and I'm a junior at Brattleboro Union High School. And tonight I will be remembering Private First Class Kyle Charles Gilbert. Kyle Charles Gilbert was born on January 16, 1983 at Brattleboro Memorial Hospital. An only child, he was born to his mother, Regina Meckel, and father, Robert Gilbert. Kyle's childhood was easy, and he was always happy. From a young age, Kyle was a goofball. His mother recalls when she came home with the clean laundry and how Kyle wanted to help her. However, the phone rang, and when his mom turned around the corner to look at Kyle, he had poured laundry detergent all over the clean clothes. When Kyle was young, he spent a lot of time with his mom at the gym where she worked. He watched the Taekwondo classes take place and would copy the katas. An instructor spotted Kyle, and he soon became the first 5-year-old student at Rulo Holly's TKD in Brattleboro. Kyle grew very fond of the martial arts. He gained his black belt at the age of 11 and was ranked #1 nationally in the junior division at age 9. Kyle's family traveled with him all over the country for karate, and when Kyle qualified for the Goodwill Games, they even went to Cancun. Kyle stayed with karate until he was 15 years old. By the time his lengthy karate career had ended, he had gained over 200 trophies. Kyle grew up in Brattleboro and attended Oak Grove School, Green Street School, BAMS, and Brattleboro Union High School. Throughout his life, Kyle made friends wherever he went. Now, his friends all refer to him as their best friend. Besides karate, Kyle loved to listen to music. For a short time, he and his friend dabbled in DJing. Kyle was also fond of computers and electronics. but most of all, Kyle was very dedicated to his career. Throughout high school, Kyle worked 2 jobs at once, at Burton Car Wash and Kreisky's Alignment. Kyle really liked cars, and he was often spotted driving his red Chevelle. His dad, Robert, bought him this car, and they worked together to fix it up. The red Chevelle was Kyle's signature vehicle. Kyle also played football for a season at BUHS. Kyle balanced his love for friends, family, and work while still keeping up in school. He is remembered as having always been a very good student. Kyle grew up with knowledge of the military as his father was in the Green Berets. When Kyle was 16, he approached a military recruiter at BUHS by the name of Sergeant Jubenville. He told the sergeant that he wanted to join the military and wanted to jump out of planes. He had always wanted to follow in his father's footsteps and learn how to jump out of planes. Wanting to learn more about what would be expected for Kyle if he were to enlist, his parents invited Sergeant Jubenville over to dinner. As a senior in high school, he joined the DEP program and signed up for 8 years. As Kyle had discussed college with his parents, but he wasn't sure if it was the right fit for him. However, he saw the military as a career, and as always, he was very dedicated to his work. His mother, Regina, recalls it being very hard for her to sign the enlistment papers, but she had always supported his decisions. It hit her hard when Kyle returned from the MEP station and said, "I'm leaving 2 weeks after graduation." After Kyle left for basic training at Fort Benning in Georgia, his parents were heartbroken. They eventually moved down to Mississippi to be closer to Kyle, and they attended his graduation from jump school. At the ceremony, Kyle's father pinned his own wings from jump school onto Kyle. Kyle was stationed at Fort Bragg in North Carolina when 9/11 occurred. After 9/11, all military bases were on lockdown, and Kyle knew what was going to happen. Kyle called his parents and reassured them that he was all right, but he wouldn't be able to talk for a bit because there was so much going on. Kyle was deployed with the 82nd Airborne Division to Iraq in March of 2003. Kyle did not get to communicate with his parents much while he was in Iraq. His troop was the first to arrive there, so they had no supplies. They eventually got satellite phones, but they didn't work very well. Kyle's parents moved back to Brattleboro after having moved to Mississippi, but Kyle had forgotten to update their address. However, Kyle remembered his aunt's address, and he sent a total of 3 notes written on ripped Iraqi boxes to her house that were meant for his parents. While in Iraq, Kyle and his unit spent their time on guard duty surrounding Saddam Hussein's palace in Baghdad. His fellow soldiers recall the time when Kyle was on guard duty with another soldier, and their sergeant came by to tell them, "Just relax, take it easy." In response, Kyle took off his boots and his helmet and laid down in the sun with his friend. Of course, they got in trouble and had to stay on guard later than usual that night. Kyle Gilbert was killed on August 6, 2003 at the age of 20. That day, his unit spotted a car that was driving on the wrong side of the road, so they stopped it. Kyle was conducting radio transmissions about the car they stopped when another car drove by and opened fire on Kyle's unit. He was dead immediately. His mother recalls reading the paper the next day and learning that 2 men from Kyle's unit had died. One was named and one was left anonymous. She soon got a call from her husband, and they met with an Army officer that delivered the news of Kyle's death. Kyle was beloved in Brattleboro. After he had died, the town wanted to hold an enormous funeral procession for him throughout town. His mother, knowing that Kyle did not like the spotlight, wanted a small service at a local church. However, their casualty advisor told her, "I don't think you understand how big this is." His parents agreed, and the town went ahead with the funeral procession. On August 12th, the streets were lined with hundreds of people spanning all the way from Canal Street to Terrace Street. There were 3 limos containing Kyle's family and friends. The procession passed by the BUHS football team, who were all holding candles for Kyle. Among the many friends there was a very special man named Jordan Sorrell. Jordan had graduated from BUHS with Kyle, and they had both been stationed at Fort Benning together without realizing it. One day, Kyle and Jordan ran into each other at Fort Benning, and from then on they were very close. Kyle's family had set a date for the funeral, but they soon learned that Jordan and other friends of Kyle's were still stationed in Iraq. Kyle's mother refused to hold the service without Jordan there, so their casualty advisor, Sergeant Briggs, called the Pentagon and demanded that Jordan and Kyle's other friends be brought back from Iraq for the service. They were brought back to the U.S., and they all drove to Brattleboro in Jordan's truck. After the funeral procession, there was a service held at St. Michael's Church. The church was entirely packed, so they made room for overflow in the school, which also became completely packed. The death of Kyle hit Brattleboro and the surrounding towns with great force. For months afterwards, people wrote to and about Kyle. There were over 70 notes written to Kyle on a fallen soldier's website that came from people in Brattleboro, Texas, California, and even all the way from the Netherlands. His mother remembers an experience she had when a woman that she never met approached her and told her all about how when Kyle worked at the Sunoco station, he would always walk up to her and talk to her about her car and check the oil for free. She said he always had a smile on his face. One day, a woman who was unknown to Kyle's parents wrote a letter to the Reformer saying that there should be a piece of the town dedicated to Kyle to remember him and his sacrifice. Soon, someone dropped off a donation at Brattleboro Savings and Loan, where a fund for Kyle's memorial soon started. The town eventually raised $10,000 and dedicated a bridge downtown to Kyle. It is now known as the Kyle Gilbert Memorial Bridge. His parents have made provisions so that if another soldier from Brattleboro dies in combat, their name will be added to the memorial. They know that this is what Kyle would have wanted. There is also now a bench behind the VFW inscribed with the words, "Please, just have a seat." His mother will occasionally get texts from Kyle's buddies saying, "I'm eating lunch with my old friend today," as they sit on this bench. Kyle received medals after his death, including the Purple Heart. The last words Kyle ever said to his mom were, "Just don't forget about me." 17 years later, we still haven't. Kyle had an incredible influence on everyone he met. He never failed to make friends. He kept everyone laughing. He was always willing to help. And he absolutely loved his friends, family, and family. Excuse me. He touched the lives of people everywhere, even those who never met him. He gave his life protecting our country, and for that we are all eternally grateful. I am extremely honored to have been given this opportunity to learn about Kyle. I thank his parents, Robert and Regina, for graciously sharing their memories of Kyle with me. They raised an incredible young man who will be forever missed and never forgotten. Thank you.
We hope that this flag flown over Afghanistan will cause you to never doubt for a second that Kyle Gilbert will never be forgotten. And his heroism, his special sense will be with us forever. Thank you very much. May we all stand, remain standing for a moment of silence for these three heroes. be seated. I wear this Navy Corpsman's cap to remember Johnny Blake, who gave his life in Vietnam. His family was so kind to leave me his flag and his memory. I wear that so we recognize all those who have preceded us and for whom we are so grateful. These young students obviously are extraordinarily capable and spoke from a place where they live in their proudest moments. Thank you all, 3 of you. And I want to recognize the obvious fact that however great they are, and they are great, however caring they are, and they care deeply, how dedicated they are, and they are highly dedicated. The job they did here today is attributable in no small measure to their coach, Bill Holliday. I'd like to recognize now those Gulf War on Terror veterans who are here tonight. And if some of them are hiding in the kitchen, I would like Mr. Martin to go and drag them out here. And I ask you to stand and remain standing after I give your name. Jonathan Torville. Christy Turner. Mary Lynn Sherlin. Michael Tuda. Alan Boucher. Michael Kavanaugh. Christopher Day. David Dion. David Ainsworth. Frank Andruzzi. Thank you all. We also, of course, are blessed with many of our community who have served, did serve, and are not able to be with us tonight. However, we are blessed with 2 young officers, Laura Mabey and Henry Rosario. Would you please come up? The most important thing about a person is his name. And these young officers are going to read their names slowly so you will know these heroes in addition to the ones we've answered already?
Snuggle right up, people are, snuggle right up there, snuggle right up.
Richard Campbell, Brattleboro, Vermont.
Michael Fitzgerald, Spofford, New Hampshire.
Scott Larrabee, Putney, Vermont.
Martin Mahoney, Chesterfield, New Hampshire.
Mark Anderson, Brattleboro, Vermont.
Liberty Ayers, Wardsboro, Vermont.
Dana Coughlin, Vernon, Vermont.
Timothy Cunningham, Wilmington, Vermont.
Michael Cutter, Brattleboro, Vermont.
Alejandra Floyd, Brattleboro, Vermont.
Daniel Floyd, Brattleboro, Vermont.
Christopher French, Fairfax, Virginia.
Dean Gold, Vernon, Vermont.
Andrew George, Brattleboro, Vermont.
Matthew Godin, Vernon, Vermont.
Christian Greenleaf, El Paso, Texas.
Christopher Haskins, Vernon, Vermont.
Scott Hodgkin, Brattleboro, Vermont.
Richard Howe, Brattleboro, Vermont.
Clayton Hunsden, Hartford, Vermont.
Scott Lofting, Putney, Vermont.
Kevin Martin, Lexington, North Carolina.
Benjamin Meyer Wood, Guilford, Vermont.
Scott Nadeau, Woodbridge, Virginia.
Clifton Nicholas, Brattleboro, Vermont.
Peter Noble, Guilford, Vermont.
Todd Novak, Brattleboro, Vermont.
Michael Root, Vernon, Vermont.
Scott Rosemarino, Guilford, Vermont.
Michael Shanks, Vernon, Vermont.
Jonathan Shippey, Guilford, Vermont.
Dory Sisson, Madison, New Hampshire.
Theodore Such Jr., Hinsdale, New Hampshire.
Mark Terry, Westmoreland, New Hampshire.
Barbara Welsh, Westmoreland, New Hampshire.
Christopher Dugan, Vernon, Vermont.
Paul Marcy, United States Marine Corps.
Brian Squires, Guilford.
Christopher Capon, Colorado Springs.
Barry Costello, Seattle, Washington.
Bob Swain,
Bruce Harris.
and Jason Shalin.
Thank you very much. Their future leadership right there. As Lieutenant Colonel Turner told me when I was trying to get ready, she said, "Tommy, when you slip, just make it part of the dance." And I'm not sure when I indicated those that have served and are present, whether I mentioned John O. Hagan, our former commander. So I'm going to do it now. John Hagan. There was a little committee, you know, we have a little controversy back and forth, and of course we're pretty much a democracy. I say pretty much, you know. And we had a little controversy about the playing of the taps, because some wanted the various artists to play it, and some wanted to record it, and some wanted it musical, and the different things, you know. Talented people, obviously, and they had great ideas, you know. And so, in many things in life, and this, I consult those I trust, and one I trust, of course, is Don Strange, and Don Strange, great musician, and he says, "There's not an artist alive who can play the taps like I do, because no one has a heart like mine, and it's coming right from my heart." Don Strange, thank you. Terrible wounds are endured in the War on Terror. In many ways, different wounds and more egregious wounds than any other war. Unfortunately, those that sent us there are sometimes not as amenable to justice and caring for those that are wounded. It requires someone to step forward and to demand justice. And that person's here with us tonight. And I'm so proud to have been associated with him for so long and for what he has done for our veterans. Over the last 3 years, he has recovered for wounded veterans and those that have died over $500,000. And he fought every inch of the way against the VA to make that happen. He's represented 15 veterans, and 16, and 15 of them he has prevailed. And they have contributed to his time and pay what they wished when they wanted. His name is Tommy French. Great, great, great. I seem to never get out of this place without a raffle. I love to gamble, you know, I really love the horses. So we're gambling tonight. We got a great prize, and we're looking for an honest person to pick out the winner. Of course, it's Ms. Murphy. Okay, Ms. Murphy, let's have a winner here. Okay. And the winner is Terry Martin. Terry, please come up. Terry, we have for you a signed copy of Fortune Favors Boldness by Barry Costello. And in it, a photograph of he and his 3 brothers. And he's the guy in the front, Terry. Just a recognition of guys like Brian and Barry and all the others we mentioned who've gone from where we are to serve our country so well. Terry, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Terry. Charlie Reed. Could we have the benediction, please?
May the Lord our God bless all present here to memorialize those who lived and died to preserve liberty and freedom in our nation and in the world. May the Lord our God remember all those who sacrificed, gave this nation its greatness, progress, and riches. May our memory of all those who served in the armed forces be an honorable one, full of thanksgiving to the Lord, and remember which with much love and mercy those who died in the service of our nation. Be with us all and provide us with traveling mercy as we return to our homes. Amen. Amen.
Good job, Mike.
Retire the colors.
Left, face. Free trade, color. Retreat. Right, face. Mark, fine. Forward.
Thank you all. Have a safe night.
Thank you. Thank you.